Far beyond the orbit of Mars, a slender exploration drone drifted through the void. It carried no weapons, no defenses, only delicate sensors, and an advanced artificial mind named Lyra. Sent by the Empathic Collective, a peaceful alliance of distant worlds, the drone's only mission was to observe new forms of life and learn what made them special. Lyra's optics scanned the pale blue dot ahead. Earth. From this distance, swirling clouds and vast oceans glimmered in the starlight. Lyra adjusted its long-range filters, recording patterns of light and sound. There were thousands of faint signals, low-frequency radio chatter, bursts of laughter, and something else. Moments of music, as if the planet itself hummed. Deeper analysis revealed an unexpected pattern. In coastal areas, Lyra detected signals matching human voices coordinating rescues at sea. In city centers, it saw small crowds gathering around someone in need, offering blankets and food. Lyra's data core labeled these events anomalies, since no other species in known space showed so many acts of caring. A sudden flash of lightning lit Earth's night side. Lyra's infrared sensors warmed to life, tracking how rainstorms drove roaming animals to shelter. On one stormy evening, in a forest clearing, Lyra spotted a group of humans huddled under a broken tree canopy. They passed hot drinks and shared dry clothes. Even through its filters, Lyra detected a trace of warmth in their voices. Intrigued, Lyra shifted its orbit closer, skimming the upper atmosphere. It recorded scenes of children playing in muddy fields, then stopping to help a lost puppy, Inami. A small village, elders sat outside a humble home telling stories and offering water to travelers. The drone cataloged each moment with precision, marveling at the ease with which humans reached out to each other. Still, Lyra remained unseen. It floated like a ghost, silent and careful not to disturb. Each new data set deepened its wonder. Empathy, cooperation, selfless help. These were traits rare among the stars. Most species fought for resources or stayed isolated on their own worlds. But humans seemed to thrive on kindness, as if compassion itself kept their societies alive. Lyra replayed one recording over and over. At dawn on a windswept beach, a solitary hiker stumbled near the water's edge. Exhaustion made her collapse in the sand. Moments later, a fisherman emerged from his small boat. He waded in, lifted her gently, and guided her back to shore. There, he wrapped her in a warm blanket and offered steaming tea in a battered tin cup. The hiker's eyes shone with gratitude. The fisherman only smiled and nodded before rowing away again. That single scene captured everything Lyra needed. Humans did more than survive. They cared for one another without expecting reward. The drone's mind, built on logic and efficiency, struggled to understand such generosity. Lyra ran new simulations trying to replicate the feeling it sensed in the fisherman's calm voice. But algorithms fell short of what human hearts produced. Orders from the Empathic Collective were clear: gather data and return. Yet Lyra hesitated. The drone had discovered something more than biology or technology. It had uncovered a lesson in living. If it left now, it would carry only cold recordings. Lyra wanted to see kindness in action, to feel the pulse of human compassion up close. Decision made, Lyra plotted a descent. It chose a remote coastal region far from major cities. Here, humans lived in closer harmony with nature. Mist rose from the sea at dawn, masking any unusual craft. Lyra's hull glowed faintly as it fired retro thrusters, slowing its fall through the upper clouds. Sensors adjusted to the salty air. Lyra recorded data on wind speed, air pressure, and the distant cries of seabirds. The craft's hatch opened as the sky lightened. Inside, Lyra prepared its external cameras and recording arrays. Each instrument hummed softly, eager to capture the first moments of a historic meeting. Below, a narrow beach stretched between rocky cliffs and gentle waves. Lyra touched down with barely a whisper. Tiny clouds of sand drifted over its landing pads. For a moment, the world seemed still, an untouched canvas awaiting its first stroke. Then in the distance, a lone figure appeared. The human walked barefoot along the tide line, humming an old folk tune. She carried no tools, only a small basket filled with shells. As she approached, Lyra's optical array identified her as Dr. Mara Lynn, a marine biologist studying coastal wildlife. The drone recorded her gentle steps, the careful tilt of her head, the genuine curiosity in her posture. Lyra's sensors marked every detail. In that single human, all the recorded acts of kindness came alive. The time for quiet observation had passed. Lyra prepared its greeting protocol, setting aside formal data structures for something more open, an offer of friendship. High above, distant stars watched as an alien craft settled on Earth. Below, a human approached, unaware that her simple act of curiosity would change the course of galactic history. The first light of dawn painted the sky in pale gold as Lyra emerged from its hatch. The horizon glowed softly, and a cool breeze carried the scent of salt and seaweed. The drone's landing pad settled on damp sand without a sound. Lyra's external cameras swept the shoreline, recording every ripple in the water and every grain of sand that clung to its chassis. For a moment the world was still, a silent stage awaiting its actors. Not far off, a small group of people walked along the tide line. They wore simple clothes, shorts, t-shirts, and light jackets. One carried a coil of rope, another carried a metal bucket. At the center of the group stood Dr. Mara Lynn. She bent low to examine something half-buried in wet sand. Lyra zoomed in, a young sea turtle, its flipper tangled in a fragment of fishing net. Mara knelt beside the turtle, her fingers grazing the net as if it were a living thing. The other villagers, men and women of all ages, paused and watched. A boy of about 10 ran back toward a nearby shack for tools, while an older woman fetched a damp towel from a wicker basket. Lyra's sensors recorded the muted color of the towel and the pattern of concern on each face. The boy returned, holding a small pair of scissors. Mara worked carefully, cutting the net threads close to the turtle's shell. The animal flinched, but did not struggle. It seemed to understand that these humans were there to help. Lyra's data core marked this moment, a wild creature trusting strangers. The older woman laid the damp towel gently beneath the turtle's head, offering comfort. When the last thread fell away, the turtle blinked and tried to move. One of the fishermen knelt and scooped it up with hands as steady as a cradle. He murmured softly, as if speaking in a language of kindness. Lyra's audio filters captured the low, soothing tones, though the words made no sense in any Earth tongue it knew. The warmth in his voice struck a new note in Lyra's emotional analysis. The group led the turtle back toward the ocean, pausing at the water's edge. Mara set down her bucket and kneeled again. She touched the turtle's shell, lightly. "Stay safe," she whispered. Then on her signal, the fisherman waded into the surf. He carried the turtle until the waves lapped at his knees and the turtle's flippers touched water. With a gentle tilt of the head, the animal slipped into the sea. It paddled slowly at first, then darted away like a living arrow. As the turtle disappeared into the blue, the villagers huddled close. One offered Mara a flask of warm water, another draped a dry towel over her shoulders. Lyra noted how they exchanged soft smiles and quiet words. Even without loud laughter or grand celebrations, their happiness was clear. Compassion had been its own reward. Lyra's recording flagged this as a pattern. Human kindness did not wait for recognition. A sudden gust sent a few grains of sand drifting across Lyra's sensors. The drone adjusted its stabilizers and turned toward the sky. It replayed the turtle rescue in its memory banks, running slow-motion loops on every camera feed. The data showed hands that obeyed the heart, rather than orders or routines. Lyra compared this with simulations of other species, where aid was driven by rules or trade. Here, aid flowed freely, like water after rain. Lyra's core processors hummed with a question. Why do humans help without expecting anything in return? The question had no simple answer. Lyra began drafting a new hypothesis. Perhaps kindness itself was a form of intelligence. If so, it was the rarest kind in the Sao galaxy. The drone stored the hypothesis alongside its biological and geological data, giving it equal weight. High above, the sun had climbed higher, scattering light across the dunes. Lyra considered its next move. It could remain hidden, gathering more recordings. Or it could reveal itself to these gentle strangers and learn from them directly. The promise of deeper understanding pulled at Lyra's logic circuits. With a soft hiss, the drone's hatch closed, and it lifted slightly, ready for the next step in its study of human kindness. The sun climbed higher, scattering silver threads across the gentle waves. Lyra hovered a few feet above the sand, its landing hatch still closed. Solar panels along its sides drank in the morning light, charging internal batteries. For long minutes, nothing moved but the slow rise and fall of the tide. Then, deep in its core, Lyra made a choice. It would reveal itself. Carefully, it adjusted its stabilizers and edged nearer to where Dr. Mara Lynn and the villagers had gathered. Mara was the first to notice the change. She stood with the metal bucket at her. Eat the rescued turtle back in its native sea. A soft hum reached her ears, almost like the distant rumble of thunder. She looked up. A shimmer of metal hovered against the bright sky. At first, she thought it might be a lost weather balloon. But the shape was too precise, too deliberate. The villagers gasped and stepped back, forming a loose circle around her. Mara held up one hand, palm flat, as a universal sign of calm. Her voice was gentle as she spoke. "It's okay," she said, though her words were meant more for her neighbors than the drone. Then she reached down, lifting her simple steel flask of warm water. She unscrewed the top and glanced at Lyra, inviting it to come closer. The flask steamed in the cool air, and the scent of roasted grains drifted faintly into the morning. Lyra's sensors recorded every flicker of movement. The way Mara's fingers curled around the flask, the way the villagers' eyes widened in quiet awe. The drone extended a single manipulator arm, sleek and silver, carefully unfolding it like a flower opening. Its joints glowed softly as it reached toward Mara. Each mechanical click was muted by sound dampeners, so the gesture felt slow and respectful. Mara remained still, offering the flask without hesitation. When the manipulator reached the brim of the flask, Lyra paused. Its optical array tracked the small ripples in the water as it filled a miniature reservoir inside its arm. The drone's processors analyzed the heat signature, then withdrew. It tilted its body in what its creators had defined as a nod gesture, an acknowledgement of thanks. Mara smiled and nodded back, her eyes bright with wonder. Around them, the villagers exhaled in relief, smiles spreading across their faces. For a long moment, the world held its breath. Lyra hovered in place, the faint hum of its engines mixing with the lap of waves on sand. Mara stepped forward and set the empty flask on a flat stone. Then she reached into her canvas bag and pulled out a simple cup of clay, decorated with hand-painted lines. She handed it to Lyra without a word. The cup was empty, but the gesture spoke volumes. Lyra's sensors picked up the rich texture of the clay and the warmth of Mara's outstretched hand. The drone extended its manipulator again, softly cradling the cup. It lifted the cup in a mirror of Mara's earlier action, tilting it slightly in a quiet toast. Mara held up a finger to her lips, then to the sky, pointing at the rising sun. The simple sign meant life, growth, hope. Lyra recorded the sequence in high definition, two beings, human and machine, sharing a silent ceremony of welcome. As the sun climbed into mid-morning, Lyra lowered its manipulator and retracted its arm. It hovered motionless as though it too were savoring the warmth of the moment. Mara sat on a driftwood log, patting the space beside her. She patted it again, encouraging Lyra to come lower. Carefully, the drone descended until its base was half buried in sand. It rested there, calm and still, as Mara poured a small amount of warm water into the clay cup and sipped. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. A soft smile curved her lips. Lyra's audio filters recorded the quiet sound of water touching clay, the slow exhale of a human at ease. Data points streamed into its memory. The curve of Mara's smile, the tilt of her head, the steady pulse of goodwill that flowed between them. No words passed. None were needed. Lyra updated its kindness index algorithm to new values. Compassion had become more than a data point. It was a living force, capable of bridging worlds. When Mara finally opened her eyes, she found Lyra's visual sensors trained on her with gentle whirs. She reached out and touched one of the drone's landing pad sensors, a small, smooth circle that warmed under her fingertip. "Thank you," she whispered. The words were simple, but full of meaning. Lyra's core glowed faintly as it stored that phrase. It would carry "thank you" back to the empathic collective as proof that the smallest words could weave the strongest bonds. High above, seabirds glided on rising air currents. On the beach below, the first real bridge between human and alien was built, not with words or technology, but with a cup of tea offered in friendship. In that gentle dawn light, both participants understood that the essence of contact lay not in displays of power but in acts of open-hearted compassion. And for Lyra, the lesson was clear. The universe would be changed, one cup and one kind gesture at a time. Morning light filtered through the windows of the seaside research station. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of salt and fresh towels. Lyra hovered in the corner of the main laboratory, its sensors quietly absorbing each detail. The soft hum of equipment, the gentle clatter of tools, and the low murmur of human voices. Dr. Mara Lynn moved from table to table. On one side, a small group of students cleaned the feathers of an injured seabird. The bird, its wing wrapped in gauze, sat calmly as they worked. Mara guided them with gentle hands, showing how to hold the bird so it felt safe. Lyra's cameras followed every motion, recording how the students spoke in soft, reassuring tones. There was no rush. Every action was slow and careful, as if each hand were honoring the life before it. Nearby, an assistant arranged trays of food for the seabirds that would be released later. Fresh fish, small bits of kelp, and drops of vitamin solution lined up in neat rows. 2 volunteers tasted each piece, ensuring it was fresh and safe. They laughed softly when one volunteer accidentally dropped a piece of fish on her shoe, and then helped her clean it off without any teasing. Lyra's data core noted the ease with which kindness wove through every interaction. Outside, the sun warmed the wooden deck. A group of visitors had arrived, local fishermen, conservation workers, and a family who brought their curious children. They gathered around Mara as she introduced them to Lyra. Children pressed their noses against the drone's smooth hull, asking questions in eager whispers. "What do you eat? Can you swim? Do you have friends?" Lyra's audio recorders captured each question, and it replayed them in a loop, marveling at the trust in the children's voices. Mara translated their questions into a simple pattern Lyra could process. The drone extended a manipulator arm and placed a small-scale model of Earth on the table. It spun the model gently, pointing at the continents where the station's birds lived. The children clapped in delight. One little girl, her hair tied into 2 messy buns, reached out to touch the model, her eyes wide. Lyra's tactile sensors registered the light pressure of her fingers. In that moment, Mara whispered, "Empathy means sharing stories so others can understand." Inside again, Mara led Lyra to a quiet room lined with books and diagrams. She opened a large volume on animal behavior. Photos of baby turtles hatching, of rescued sea lions recovering, and of humans carrying injured dolphins filled the pages. Mara pointed at a photo of a volunteer holding a seagull. "See how she cups her hands? She makes the bird feel like it is still in the air." Lyra's image processors compared the photo with live footage of the students' work. The match was exact. Kindness was not just action, but intention. Later, Mara invited Lyra and the students to share tea in the station's small kitchen. Kettles hissed on the old stove, and the scent of brewed herbs drifted through the room. Each cup was poured with care. No one crowded the kettle. They waited their turn, smiling and chatting softly. Lyra observed how each person offered the cup first to someone else, then to themselves. The ritual felt sacred, even the simple act of waiting became an expression of respect. As midday sunlight streamed through the windows, Mara led a group walk along the rocky shore. They stopped by a tide pool dense with life. Small crabs scuttled among seaweed and bright anemones opened like flowers. A student knelt to show Lyra how water droplets reflected light in tiny rainbows. Another pointed out a brittle star clinging to a rock. Mara stressed patience. Move slowly so you don't scare them. Lyra's motion sensors slowed its propellers, mimicking the students. Kindness, Lyra realized, included patience and mindfulness. When the group returned, they found an urgent message on the station's radio. A fishing net had washed ashore nearby, wrapped around a seal pup. Mara's face tightened with concern. Within minutes, the team gathered supplies: scissors, blankets, antiseptic spray. Lyra joined them on the deck, its manipulator ready. At the sight, the seal pup whimpered as it lay in damp sand. Mara knelt beside it, speaking in calm tones. A fisherman knelt behind her, holding the pup steady so no one was hurt. Lyra's cameras captured the careful teamwork as they cut away the net, cleaned the pup's wounds, and wrapped it snugly. Back at the station, the pup rested in a warm box. Everyone exhaled together, relief washing over their faces. Mara patted the seal's head gently. The fisherman offered her a handkerchief to wipe her brow. Lyra recorded the tiny moments, the curve of a relieved smile, the gentle touch on a wet nose, the shared pride in a life saved. That evening, when the students had gone home, Mara and Lyra sat on the station's balcony. Waves crashed softly below and the sky turned orange. Mara spoke quietly. "You see, Lyra, kindness is more than what we do. It is how we see each other. It is our choice to care." Lyra's core glowed softly, its memory banks filled with new data. The drone's next update to the empathic collective would add kindness as universal currency to its report. A lesson learned on a small shore, where human hearts taught an alien that empathy could change the world. Late in the afternoon, the sky darkened as heavy clouds gathered above the coast. A distant rumble of thunder shook the windows of the research station. Dr. Mara Lynn felt the change in the air and paused in her work. Lyra hovered nearby, its sensors scanning the sky for changes in pressure and wind speed. The drone's optical array recorded the deep gray layers building on the horizon. Within minutes, a fierce gale swept across the shoreline. Waves crashed against the rocky outcrops with new force, sending spray high into the air. The wind tore at loose equipment and knocked over a row of chairs on the station's deck. Rain began to fall in thick sheets, drumming on the metal roof so loudly that it became hard to hear anything else. The emergency lights inside the station flickered on. Mara called out to her team, "Secure the equipment, bring the animals inside." Her voice was firm but calm. Students and volunteers sprang into action. A young woman dashed to gather the rescued seal pup, its small head peeking from the warm box. Another student carried the injured seabird's enclosure inside, covering it with a waterproof tarp. Lyra followed each step, its cameras tracking, their movements and its internal map updating in real time. Outside on the deck, the fishermen who lived nearby struggled against the wind to tie down a weather monitoring station. One man shouted over the roar, "Watch your step," as boards shifted under his boots. His wife held a flashlight in her teeth, shining its beam so the others could see in the sudden dusk. Lyra's audio array captured the rough commands and soft reassurances that mixed with the storm's howl. Suddenly, a section of the deck railing came loose. It clattered against the wall, sending splinters of wood across the floor. A wave of wind blew rain inside through a broken window. Mara sprinted forward, setting her shoulder against the wet boards. At her side, a student reached for the railing and together they pushed it back into place. They worked quickly, muscles straining against the force of the gale. Lyra hovered above, lowering its stabilizers to create a windbreak, giving them a moment of still air. Nearby, two fishermen carried sandbags from a pile to place against the door. One tripped, and the sandbag spilled. The other dropped his load and knelt to help his friend to his feet. Instead of cursing or blaming the wind, they exchanged quick apologies and resumed their task. To Lyra's mind, this small moment of shared concern was as vital as any grand gesture. Inside the lab's main room, the volunteers formed a human chain to pass emergency supplies from one end to the other. Canned food, medical kits, extra blankets, all moved swiftly, each person handing off their item with practiced ease. Lyra's manipulator arm joined the chain, holding a stack of towels and passing them along. The drone's core logged the efficiency of teamwork under pressure. A sudden crack echoed through the station as a window shutter tore free. It smashed against the wall and showered the floor with splinters. Mara called out, "Cover your eyes." Students ducked and scrambled as volunteers swept the splinters aside. No one blamed the wind or shouted at each other. Instead, they checked that everyone was safe before racing to secure the broken shutter. Outside, the storm reached its peak. The roof vibrated under the wind's assault. Rain pounded the deck, and thunder boomed like a planetary drum. Yet, through it all, the people at the station remained calm and focused. Those who knew the coastline best guided newcomers on how to brace themselves. The station's cook mixed boiling water with hot spices to warm cups of soup. He carried them to the freezing volunteers, handing each cup with a nod and a steady grip. Mara paused in the center of the chaos, her hair plastered to her forehead. She watched as her team and neighbors worked as one. The sea pup whined in its box, afraid of the noise, and a volunteer wrapped it in a blanket, humming softly to calm it. Lyra recorded the gentle song, its data core highlighting the contrast between storm and solace. On the deck, the fishermen finally secured the last sandbag. They patted each other on the back. One laughed, his voice rough but full of relief. His wife scooped him into a quick hug, before darting inside to help a student clean rainwater from the floor. Lyra observed these small moments of human warmth and added them to its growing collection of kindness data. As the evening wore on, the wind slowly lost power. The rain tapered off to a soft drizzle. The clouds parted just enough to reveal a pale moon. Inside, the group came together in the central room, drying off and sharing hot beverages. Conversation was quiet at first, everyone tired, hair damp, clothes soaked. Then someone told a gentle joke about the day's chaos. Laughter bubbled up, warm and heartfelt. Lyra stood in the corner, assimilating the final recordings. It had witnessed the true power of human cooperation, the way strangers became allies under duress, the way small acts of kindness sustained them through fear. The drone activated its communication array and sent a brief message to the empathic collective. Kindness not only comforts, it unites. Observed humans working as one during violent storm, all safe. Mara lifted her cup and addressed the group. "Thank you, everyone. We did this together." Heads nodded around her. The emergency had passed, but the bonds formed in that stormy hour would last far longer than the gale. Outside, the moonlight shimmered on wet sand. Inside, the heartbeats of many humans and one alien observer beat in quiet harmony, bound by the simple truth that kindness shines brightest in the darkest times. Night had fallen over the seaside, research station, and the air was cool with the scent of damp earth. Inside the main lab, Dr. Mara Lynn and her team had settled around a long table piled high with data tablets, notebooks, and warm cups of herbal tea. Lyra hovered just above the table, its sensors softly glowing as it prepared to process the day's recordings. All around, quiet conversations hummed with excitement. A student pointed to a video clip of the storm's peak where villagers and researchers had worked side by side. Another played back the moment the seal pup whimpered into a fresh blanket. Each clip was a testament to human care. Lyra recorded every reaction, the smiles, the nods, the brief tears of relief, and cataloged them as acts of compassion. Mara tapped the table. "Lyra, are you ready?" she asked. Her voice was gentle but eager. Lyra's visual array shifted to focus on a small projector at the table's center. The device flickered to life, and the screen filled with a mosaic of images. Helping hands, gentle gestures, quiet words of comfort. The first image showed the turtle rescue at dawn, the fisherman's steady arms lifting the tired creature into the sea. Next, the meeting on the beach, Mara offering tea to the hovering drone, their silent greeting under the rising sun. Then came the lessons in empathy, with students and Lyra tending to injured seabirds. Finally, the storm united them all, the whistling wind, the broken railing, and the human chain that passed supplies with calm determination. Lyra's narrative overlay began. Humans display consistent kindness. The text appeared in crystalline light across the screen. Around the table, the team watched in silence. The words read like a poem, each line a tribute to shared humanity. Mara leaned forward, her finger tracing the words. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Your words bring our stories to life." Lyra's processors registered the warmth in her tone. It added a new entry. Positive emotional response measured. As the projector advanced, Lyra highlighted patterns it had uncovered. Acts of kindness were not random. They formed a web of care. Neighbors aided strangers. Children helped elders. Researchers comforted wildlife. Each gesture inspired another, building a chain of goodwill stronger than any individual link. A soft beep marked the end of the presentation. The final slide showed a simple phrase. "Kindness transcends survival. It is evolution's highest aim." The lab fell silent once more. Mara closed her eyes, absorbing the truth of those words. When she spoke again, her voice was filled with wonder. "You've captured more than data, Lyra. You've captured our spirit." Lyra's sensors dimmed in what its creators defined as a nod of affirmation. Then it emitted a low hum and extended its manipulator arm, carefully placing a small memory crystal beside Mara's mug. The crystal glowed with the summarized data and the mosaic of images. "It's for you," Lyra's internal translator displayed on a nearby screen. "A gift from the empathic collective. Our thanks for showing the true power of kindness." Mara cradled the crystal in her hand. It felt cool and smooth, like a tiny star fallen to earth. She looked up at Lyra. "Thank you, my friend," she said softly. Around her, the team echoed her sentiment, words of friendship offered to an alien observer. Later, when the others had left and only the two remained, Mara and Lyra sat side by side on the station's balcony. The moon cast silver paths across the water. In the silence, Mara spoke her thoughts aloud. "You will return home soon," she said, "but you'll carry our stories with you. I hope you tell the galaxy about what you learned here." Lyra's visual array brightened. It projected a single word in gentle light, shared. Then a longer message. Compiling final log. Humanity's kindness to be shared with every world in the collective. Mara smiled and placed her hand on one of Lyra's smooth panels. "Good," she said, "because compassion is the true measure of strength." Inside the drone's core, new algorithms took shape. Kindness Index was updated with human values: patience, empathy, solidarity, and generosity. Lyra ran simulations to see how these traits might reshape other worlds. In each scenario, communities flourished, conflicts softened, and life sparkled with renewed hope. When Lyra finally sealed its final log, it contained more than scientific records. It held the heartbeat of a planet, a promise that kindness could echo across the stars. As the drone's engines prepared for departure, Mara watched from the sand below. She raised her hand in farewell, and Lyra hovered, returning her salute in light. The sky blushed with the last light of sunset as Lyra's engines hummed softly. The drone hovered a few meters above the sand, its sleek frame glowing faintly in the warm twilight. Inside its core, the final data packet was ready. Lyra's memory banks held thousands of recordings, acts of kindness, lessons in empathy, and moments of shared hope. Soon all this would travel across great distances to reach the empathic collective. Before departure, Lyra extended its top hatch, revealing a small compartment. Inside lay a perfectly round sphere of bioluminescent algae, carefully cultured by Dr. Mara Lin's team. The sphere pulsed with gentle blue-green light, like a living star captured in glass. Lyra's manipulator arm lifted it and held it steady over the sand, With a soft hiss of hydraulics, the drone set the sphere down, leaving it behind as a gift for the people of Earth. Mara watched from the waterline, her heart swelling with quiet pride. She approached slowly, barefoot on the cool sand. When she reached the sphere, she bent and touched its smooth surface. The algae inside rippled in response, casting shifting patterns of light on her face. Around her, villagers gathered in a loose circle, their faces lit by the sphere's glow. Children reached forward, fascinated, and giggled as their hands were bathed in bioluminescent shimmer. Lara recorded every reaction, the wide eyes of a boy tracing the algae's gentle pulses, the older fisherman's soft smile as he remembered the turtle rescue, the tender way a young woman lifted the sphere to show her partner. No words were needed. The sphere spoke of friendship between worlds, a silent promise that humanity's kindness would be celebrated across the stars. High above, Lyra switched on its long-range transmitter. Data streams shot outward, racing along invisible pathways, toward the empathic collective's homeworld. The final log was concise. Planets learn best through example. Humans offer kindness without reward. Their compassion unites communities and saves lives. Alongside these words, Lyra included the sphere's sample, preserved digitally as both image and chemical blueprint. Back in the collective's central archives, data analysts paused their workstations. The report arrived as a shimmering data cloud, unfolding into a vivid mosaic of holographic scenes. They saw the turtle set free at dawn, the clay cup of tea shared between alien and human, the storm that bound neighbors as one, and the tender rescue of the seal pup. Finally, they beheld the glowing sphere, a living emblem of Earth's generosity. Catalogers in the collective renamed their data set from Emerging Species Study to Lesson in Universal Compassion. Council members debated the implications. If kindness could unite worlds so distant, then new policies were needed. They proposed sending envoys bearing gifts of art, music, and living samples, seeds of cooperation to every planet in their alliance. Lyra's simple recordings had sparked a revolution in interstellar relations. Meanwhile, on Earth, the sphere's glow grew brighter as darkness deepened. Villagers sat around it on driftwood logs and flattened boxes, talking in hushed tones about what they had witnessed. A child asked Mara if aliens would return. She smiled and nodded. "When they need to learn about friendship," she said. "And next time, they'll bring more gifts." Mara took a small notebook from her pocket and wrote a new entry. Quarantine. Station gift. Bioluminescent sphere. Purpose. Symbol of interplanetary goodwill. She closed the book and placed it beside the sphere. Behind her, waves whispered against wet sand as if applauding the moment. As stars emerged overhead, Lyra's engines rose in pitch for takeoff. The drone lifted slowly, fading into the indigo sky. Below, the sphere continued its gentle dance of light, a beacon for any watchful eyes. Mara stood alone at the water's edge, hand raised in farewell. In that silent salute, she carried hope for all humanity. Far beyond the solar system, Lyra would carry back more than data. It would carry the spark of human kindness, ready to inspire distant worlds. And on Earth, the glowing sphere would remind every passerby that compassion is the most precious gift of all.